Hello everyone, this is Nadia. Welcome to week 7. For this week, we were given the task to look up the Truth and Reconciliation Report, Calls to Action 62 to 65, learn from elders and or residential school survivor videos, and use this knowledge to help us better understand how this will affect our role as teachers and how I can make the truth and reconciliation a reality as my role as a teacher. So this Truth and Reconciliation report consists of 94 calls of actions. However, today I'll be focusing on the education for reconciliation, and that is calls to action 62 to 65. Now, Calls of Action 62 calls upon the federal, provincial, and territorial governments in consultation and collaboration with survivors, Aboriginal people, and educators to number one, make age appropriate curriculum on residential schools, treaties, and Aboriginal peoples' historical and contemporary contributions to Canada a mandatory education requirement for kindergarten grade to grade 12 students. Number two, provide the necessary funding to post-secondary institutions to educate teachers on how to integrate Indigenous knowledge and teaching methods into the classroom. Number three, provide the necessary fundings to Aboriginal schools to utilize Indigenous knowledge and teaching methods in the classroom. Number four, establish senior level positions in the government and the assistant deputy minister level or higher dedicated to Aboriginal content in education. Calls of Action 63 calls upon the Council of Ministers of Education Canada to maintain an annual commitment to Aboriginal education issues, including number one, developing and implementing kindergarten to grade 12 curriculum and learning resources on Aboriginal people in Canadian history and the history and legacy of residential school. Number two, sharing information and best practices on teaching curriculum related to residential schools and Aboriginal histories. Number three, building students' capacity for intercultural understanding, empathy, and mutual respect. Number four, identifying teachers' training needs related to the above. Calls for Action 64 calls upon the levels of government that provide public funding to demonization schools to require such schools to provide an education on comparative religious studies, which must include a segment on Aboriginal spiritual beliefs and practices developed in collaboration with Aboriginal elders. Calls of Action 65 calls upon the federal government through the Social Sciences and Humanity Research Council and in collaboration with Aboriginal peoples, post-secondary institutions and educators and the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation and its partner institutions to establish a national research program with multi-years funding to advance understanding of reconciliation. So, what are the challenges that we are facing? One of the biggest challenges is that teachers face is that they don't know how or where to begin. Many teachers are understandably afraid of teaching Indigenous material poorly, perpetuating stereotypes, or overstepping their boundaries and engaging in cultural misappropriation. So, I believe that the very first step should be is learning about Indigenous cultures first before trying to incorporate it into the curriculum. Taking the time to learn about the impacts of residential school systems on Indigenous cultures and people. To better prepare ourselves, we should participate in professional development activities offered through school boards or elsewhere, completing online courses, watching videos, attending Indigenous events, and engaging with elders or knowledge keepers. The next step should be infusing Indigenous histories, cultures, and perspectives into educational curriculum. I believe that this is the very best way to contribute towards the goal of reconciliation by providing students with an opportunity to learn about Indigenous peoples with whom they share the land and on whose ancestral territories all Canadians currently reside. Another way would be to invite local Indigenous knowledge keepers into classrooms, which will provide a great opportunity to forge new and ongoing relationships. Now, I must mention here that there are excellent resources available on the Ontario Ministry of Education website that have complete lesson plans from grade 1 and to grade 8. Now, there's been a steady rise in Indigenous authors, and you can find classroom resources by Indigenous authors, including kids' books and digital tools when choosing resources. What I want to mention here, that it's really important that you think about your students and their interests and choose resources that are relevant to the lesson. This will also help make the content more meaningful to the students and teach them about diversity of Indigenous nations. Thank you.